Hello and welcome to the second in my series of Masterclass videos for MidiStep. In this video we're going to be exploring how to use the Chords feature. Now, since we've added a lot of additional features in 1.02, a lot of this is going to be new to you. So let's not waste any more time, let's get straight into it. Now, each vertical column on the MidiStep interface can hold either a note or a chord, and to add a chord we need to be in chord mode, and to do that we press the Chord Editor button. Now when you open the Chord Editor you'll see it appears under the actual notes lane and replaces the octave lane that was there before. You need to toggle the editor off in order to re-edit octave values. Now if you make sure that you tap on step 1 or column 1, you should notice that there is a single note already placed within the Chord Editor, and this becomes the root note of your chord. Now you can't remove this note, but if I move the slider for column 1 up and down, you'll notice that that moves the root note. So let's preview this sequence. So right now it's just one boring beat every quarter note, and I want to spice it up a little bit. So to create a sustained note, I'm going to add a tie in that second step position. I'm going to tap on that tie and just tap and drag from left to right, and you'll see that it paints that tie in across the next three notes. I'm going to do the same and add a beat on 5 with 3 ties, and then add a beat on 9 with 3 ties, and again on beat 13 and 3 ties. So we've got 4 notes, 4 sustained notes going all the way across the 16 beats. So let's preview how that sounds. So you can clearly hear that on beat 1 we sound a note, and that duration of that note is 4 beats. Now to signify that those notes are tied, when we try moving and dragging the fader 1, you'll see that all the other tied notes move with it. And the original notes for those columns just stay there ghosted, and there's a good reason for that which we'll explain later. Now before I start actually creating a tune with this, the first thing I'm going to do is select a scale. So in this case I'm going to pick the harmonic minor scale. I think we're our natural minor scale, and then I'm going to start repositioning these 4 notes. So I'm going to leave the original note on C, and we'll just move these somewhere else. Let's go C, G, F, F, and then maybe D sharp, and let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so now we have the start or the basis which we can work on to add or expand those notes to chords. Now because we picked a scale, you'll see that down in the Chord Editor a lot of the notes are currently red. They're notes we can't pick because they're not included in the scale. Now because I want to edit the first chord in the list, I'm going to click on step 1. And this ensures that the Chord Editor is displaying the chord that we've assigned to step 1, which currently is just a note. Now one way you can enter chords is by pressing this little keyboard button to the right of the editor. Now clicking on this button displays a menu of common chord shapes, and you can pick one from here if you don't really know any better. But I suggest really that we enter them manually for the case for this example, especially since we can only select notes that are already in the scale, it doesn't sound too wrong. But if I pick some options in here, they can sound quite discordant. So that's better. Now let's tap on step 5 and assign a chord to that. Now let's go to position 9. And finally position 13. Now, I really like that chord sequence. So now I want to turn your attention to something called Chord Chance. And Chord Chance is controlled by the little knob that's over here to the right of the Chord Editor. Now I'm going to go and click on step 1, and I'm going to alter the chord chance, which is the probability of that chord playing for that step. So I'm going to set this to 63%. And then I'm going to play back this sequence and let's hear what happens. Notice this time it played a note instead of a chord, the root note. So the higher we set the chance value, the more chance there is of it playing the chord on that position. And we can specify that maybe 25% of the time we want it to play a note instead. Now another great way of adding expression to your chords is to use the random chord feature. Now currently I've got step 1 selected, so I'm going to long press on the chord button for step 1 and change it to the random setting. Now if I start playing, initially you won't hear any difference. And that's because the complexity setting is set on 3. But I'm going to up it to 4 and see if you notice a difference. So if you didn't notice the first time, you certainly did that time. What it's doing is it's adding an extra note to those 3 notes that are already there. Let's try increasing that complexity and doing it to more of the chords. So let's do the same on the 4th chord. So what we ended up with there is chords 1, 3 and 4. We're adding 2 additional notes per cycle, and it was clearly noticeable. Now let's see what happens if we set the complexity of those chords to just 1 note. And currently we have 3 or 4 notes per chord. So let's see how that affects things. And also notice that we've left step 5 on chord and we haven't changed it to random. So as you could hear, step 5 was playing a chord still, and that's because the complexity only applies to columns that are set to random. Now if you haven't already worked it out, when complexity is set to 1, it just picks one of the notes that you've applied to that chord. So each time it hits that chord, it just randomly picks one of the notes to play. So to demonstrate a higher complexity, I'm going to remove all the additional notes from each of the chords, so that we're only left with the root note for each chord. And then what I'm going to do is set the complexity for each chord a little bit higher than it is now. Let's set it to 2 for each of the chords. And what you'll see when I play it back, it will add one additional note on playback to the one existing note. And that works really well with this guitar type sound that I've got now. Now if I click on event 1 or step 1 and up that complexity, let's see what that sounds like. So when we increased the complexity to 4, it added 3 additional notes. Now let's look at this final example of complexity. And you can see here that I've got a lot of notes, 6 notes in that first chord. And the complexity setting is only 4. Now this is a special case where the number of notes in a chord is greater than the complexity. And what MidiStep will do is try and remove notes to get to the complexity. Now if I click on step 5 to reveal the second chord, you'll see there's only one note and I've got a complexity of 2, so it's adding a note. The third chord is removing 2 notes again, like the first chord. And the fourth chord is adding an additional note to get to the complexity of 2. Okay, time to step it up a little bit. And these are some of the features I'm going to show you now that have been added to 1.02. So let's take a listen to an example. Now I want to draw your attention to the fact we've got step 1 selected here, and in the step options panel on the right hand side we have a chord articulation section, and in there is this mode button, and if I select that mode button you'll see that we're currently set to block chord, which means for that particular position, step 1, we're playing a block chord, which by definition means that all notes of the chord are played at the same time. But you'll notice 2 additional options in here, strum and arp. Now if we take a look at the second chord on step 5, you'll see that the articulation is set differently on step 5. In fact it's set to arp up. And in arp up mode we have additional parameters in the articulation panel, but we'll look at them in a minute. If we take a look at step 9, you'll see that we're playing a block chord, so there's no additional options for that. And in step 13, we're also playing a arp up. Now because step 13 is set to random, it's going to randomize 4 notes, and that's dependent on the complexity. So let's increase the complexity. Now because it's set to arp, it's playing the notes spread out over the ties. And because this random note order is selected, it's not playing in traditional arp up mode with an ascending scale. So because I have this random note order selected, it doesn't matter if I change the arp scale to arp down. So now you've seen it in action, let's take a closer look at the articulation mode and see exactly what it can do. Starting with the arp up and down modes. So let's take a look at this very simple example I've set up here with 5 chords. And if I flick between these chords, you can see that they're nothing but block chords. In this example, there are no random or complexity settings to deal with, so you can focus on what I'm about to do. So let's take a listen to it before we start messing with the articulation. Now let's set the articulation to arp down for that first step. And let's make step 9 an arp up. Now the length of that chord is 4 beats because we have the original beat and 3 ties. So let's add some more notes to this chord. Now let's enable random order. So now it's playing 8 notes in the space of 4 beats. Now let's reduce the length of the notes. That gives a very staccato-like feel. If we extend them again, the notes ring out as they overlap. So that's the arp function. So let's take a look at strumming. Now a strum can either be fast or slow, but all the notes of a strum are all played within a single beat. In this case, the ties just determine how long the chord is held. Now the only thing I've done here is to add a couple of extra notes to the first 3 chords where I want to apply a strum, and that's because guitar strums usually consist of 6 notes. Now let's take a listen before I apply the strum. Hopefully you heard that strum slow down. Now let's try putting a strum on beat 5. So now let's change the chord at beat 5 to a strum up. I think you'll agree, the articulation section really brings some dynamics and excitement to that section, as opposed to having just plain block chords. Now, one nice new feature we've added is the Chord Editor Autoscroll feature. And this can be found in the settings menu, and when enabled, it auto-scrolls the Chord Editor. Now it's right at the bottom of this menu, so you might miss it if you don't scroll. Autoscroll can also be enabled by long pressing the Chord Editor button. And if you notice, when it's on, there's a little symbol up in the top right corner to tell you it's on. Now let's begin playback and watch what happens when it hits a chord. Now if you want to pause that automatic follow, you can just turn on the pause button at the top here. Now there's another useful feature which is especially useful when you're editing chords, to hear how they sound before you actually play back your sequence. So usually when you select a step position in the chord editor, it just moves to that chord position, but if we double tap, we get a preview, but this only works when the sequencer or host is not running. Now if you want, you could change this so that it can play the preview just by a single tap, and this is an option in settings, so we need to look at the chord editor preview, chord lane preview, and I've set that to single tap, so now it's playing a chord preview when I select that particular step. Now currently I've got it set to double tap on the actual master lane position. So if I take my cursor up and click on this master lane position, I have to double tap in here at the minute to get a chord to sound. So if I click on, or double click should I say, on position 5, you'll hear that it plays a preview of the chord. Now again, that is another option that we can change in settings. This one's just a master lane preview option, and usually it's set to off, so you'll need to turn that on for it to work. Now the last thing I want to look at today is the humanize feature we added, which allows us to add imperfections into the playing of chords and notes. Now the best way to hear this is just to focus on a constant stream of notes, all of the same length and volume. So if I start this sequence going and long press on the master key button, it will bring up the Humanized Dialogue. Now increasing the note velocity will vary the actual output velocity slightly, and increasing the note timing will vary the start positions of the note, giving it a more human feel. And if I turn these off, it will return to rigid timing and velocity. So that's just about it for this video. There's plenty more videos to come. The pattern sequencer will probably be next. Don't forget to thumb up the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.